It's a beautiful day to have a beautiful day. GM. On this beautiful day. Good morning to Web3 with Barocco, Sep, and Mando. Tuning live at 10:30, and it's all on Road Radio. It's a beautiful day to have a beautiful day. GM. Road Radio.
Yo, what up? Good morning, GM. Friday, March 10th, 2023. Look at that. Another beautiful day to have a beautiful day. I don't think I have any co-hosts in the house, do I? I do. He's back. Okay, you got Rug for a second.
I can't hear you.
I got my
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. You can hear me?
Okay, I can't hear you, so there's definitely
okay.
an issue on my side.
We can definitely hear you.
I'm just gonna lip read the whole time, like practice my lip reading skills.
Maybe leave and come back, but I got my co-host of the house, Ovi, on this beautiful Friday. It is the day I need them both the most, actually, especially with all the banking shit that's going on all around the Twitter timelines. And it's oh my god, it's definitely some little technical difficulties right off the start of this show. Let's go. You already know the vibes. Today's gonna be a packed show, if I'm not mistaken. I'm bringing Golden on. All right, Golden, you're gonna help me out.
Let's do it.
Where are let's try again. Oh, I think we have echo on Golden's side. Sorry, Golden. Hold on. Osef, yo, Ovi, check. 1, 2. What? Wow, he cannot hear me. Well, that is not great. Well, talk about the start of a show. I don't know what's going on. Check 1, 2. No. I don't know where Mando is. And Ovi's rugged, and he can't hear me. Maybe just join on the Twitter Spaces. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I may as well go on a solo rant, and talk to you about how beautiful this day is. It is Friday, March 10th. We are in the middle of a lot of FUD. The timeline is, is grime. It's sad. It's heavy. Is negative, and everyone's like, yo, bring me up. I love the hey, let me get some GMs in the bottom right corner of the spaces. All right, I want everybody to give me with some GMs. Wish each other a happy Friday. And in the meantime, let me troubleshoot what is going on here and what is happening. Maybe I'll tell Ovi to just maybe just come on spaces, and then. And then maybe at some point, I have no idea what's going on this morning, ladies and gentlemen. You're going to have to give me a second over here. Maybe we put back the chill vibe music. Oh, there he is. There's Mando. Yo, can you hear me? Oh, no. Oh, there you go.
It is Road Radio. I mean, it's just classic.
Whoa, there's a lot of echoes this morning.
I'm here.
You're here.
So what happened with OSF?
You can't hear anything.
God, the one moment we need him as a co-host.
The one moment we need a co-host. Jazz is the echo going on. You guys are nowhere to be found, and OSF is rugged. So that doesn't help.
So it's Road Radio. There's only one way we could do it. That's it.
It's literally part of the brand.
I said OSF because our meeting was running over, and he's clearly he clearly has gone on strike. This is not the period that he's meant to be talking, so he decided that he didn't want to talk.
Yeah. Exactly. Someone's like, play the Pump It Up song to save the market. At this stage, nothing can save her. It's gonna take more than Pump It Up song. Though we got a nice little bounce earlier today, but we'll talk about it
little bounce, eh?
Yeah.
1407.
Yeah, I didn't buy shit. I know some people are buying blood last night. I stayed sidelined. I'm not buying any of this stuff. I'm going to Charleston today. I'm not worrying.
And then I got out of it.
Yeah,
very, very quickly.
I know you put a lot. I was thinking about you this morning when I woke up and saw the prices. I
got out of it as I went to sleep last night. I was like, this isn't rallying.
Yeah. Camilla says not Portugal's fault today. Well, it's always Portugal's fault, Camilla. Ovi, can you hear us?
I can, yeah. I don't know what, like.
Okay, we're good.
Oh, so now I turn up.
It literally just wasn't working on Chrome, so I moved to Firefox, and now
That's
it works.
funny because for me, once Mando was getting issues on Firefox and on Chrome, it's funny. We'll never get it perfectly, but here we are. Mando, if you want to join the spaces, I'm gonna add you up. Ovi, you're on the co-host spot. You're good. We're good to go. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Gem Warp 3. Today on the show, today, I think we did the titles, but honestly, it's mostly going to be like first part of the show. We're going to talk about everything going on in this market. There's a lot of great threads. I spent quite a few hours last night just going over everything because myself was trying to understand exactly what's happening ahead of coming on this morning and getting Mando and OSF to explain to us what's happening. But things are not too great. So this looks like the first part of the show, of course, DGen's market report as usual, macro, crypto, NFT. There's a lot to report here. So hang tight. Yeah. There's a lot. And then, honestly, we're going to go straight to our special guest after that. Kevin Owocki, who is the co-founder of Gitcoin. One of the biggest names on the Ethereum blockchain, if you ask me. Pretty cool. And one step closer to Vitalik on Gem Web 3. Baby steps. But in the meantime, super excited to have the founder of Supermodular. That's what he's focusing on. And the co-founder of Bitcoin, where he was a CEO on earlier on the show, and ask him a whole lot of questions about all his background, where with the state of the market and everything. And of course, I mean, we may slip a question or two about that NFT, right? That came out this week. So we'll get the answers. Okay, we'll get the answers. As usual, ladies and gentlemen, we are on YouTube and on Twitter Space at the same time. The links are all pinned at the top. The YouTube experience just gets better and better and better every day. And I'm seeing the numbers go up there, numbers go lower on Spaces. I think that's a good thing because you're going to have much more fun watching this show on YouTube, if you ask me, as we share the screen and we all show up, which is pretty fun. As usual, before we get going, the show is sponsored by Fair.xyz. There's the sponsor of the month, no-code platform that lets creators launch their NFT collections completely end-to-end. We've used them before they were even a sponsor. Why? Because they're dope as fuck. We like them, and we're launching stubs with them because they're our tech partner for this. And you guys are going to see how smooth and seamless that is. They did the tabsman. So if you've been to tabs, you already know how it feels. And it's going to be super cool. So so many different features being built in, pinned at the top, passcode needed to mint, which means that you can add a condition to your drop and someone has to enter a passcode to enter mint. I think I saw mint like a couple of days ago using that. I'm pretty sure it was unfair. And anyways, it's going to be it's a great platform, great people. I love him. And without further ado, let's talk about this market. But everybody, before we go there, take a deep breath because it's not going to be the most positive segment, but we're going to try and turn it into something somewhat okay.
Daily Market Report. Brought to you by Rug Radio. Joseph, what's the word?
Ooh, it's pretty grim this morning, huh?
Yeah.
Pretty grim this morning.
Grim.
So there's a lot going on. There's a lot to break down here. So let me just start by talking about price action. The S&P 500 is down 0.7%. NASDAQ is down 0.6%. Interest rates are having like the biggest fuck-off rally that we've seen in a long time. The US 10-year is now 3.69%. Like that's just absolutely gapped. Even in like the last 10 minutes since I last looked at it, it's gapped by like another 10 basis points. You're seeing what we call like a bull steepening of the interest rate curve. But yeah, huge rally in interest rates. All of this is, well, the main reason for all this stuff is because of the Silicon Valley Bank stuff that transpired over the last few days and kind of came to a head overnight. If you're not familiar with what they are, and by the way, like I genuinely never heard of Silicon Valley Bank until like 24 hours ago, but they're basically a bank based in California that funds, I think they funded something like 44% of tech and healthcare startups that raise in like the last year. So I think they fund like a shitload of even more than that in terms of like startups. Whether it's lending, whether it's lending.
Them and First Republic, right?
Them and First Republic, yeah. Whether it's lending, whether it's like banking. And they had invested a bunch of money into like mortgage-backed securities, and they had a bunch in US Treasuries as well. They took a huge loss on that. So what happened was they basically ran out of cash. And yesterday or 2 days ago, they were like, okay, we need to do a big capital raise. We want to try and raise $2.3 billion through a share sale, because I don't think they specifically said they ran out of cash, but I think they said they needed the capital. Obviously, when you do something like that, people start asking questions. I think people probably already were asking questions, and no one wants to they can't even get the share sale through because no one wants to buy the stock. So on the back of that, the stock dropped 60% yesterday. I think it was down another 50% today. So it's down like 80 or 90% in the last few days. And bank stocks, traditional bank stocks along with it. So like Deutsche Bank, JP Morgan, Bank of America, all these big bank stocks in Europe and the US have all dropped significantly as well. And that's because of the potential contagion that any of these guys may have to SVB. In turn, crypto has been crushed as well. Like crypto is down. We've dropped all the way
Down bad.
Yeah, we're down like basically down 10% on Bitcoin and ETH. We're off the lows. Altcoins are down like 20%, I think. And I think crypto was already feeling pretty shaky, as it was anyway. We'd already started to see like the short-term downtrend. And then, something like this, where you have like a shitload of tech firms, probably a decent chunk of which are like crypto-related startups, get affected. Like there's natural correlation and kind of like a sentiment drift, which would cause crypto to go lower as well. So crypto is also a decent amount lower, I think, on the back of this as well. And the final thing to mention is like with all this shit that's happening, we actually had payrolls today as well, which is the number that we've been waiting for a long time. And the payrolls number came in at 300,000 versus the expectations of 210,000. So once again, I think for the 7th or 8th month in a row, payrolls came in a lot higher than expectations. I think the other thing to look out for and to be conscious of there is that unemployment came in higher than expected and wage inflation came in lower than expected. So of the three things that we're looking at in terms of labor market indicators, payrolls came in higher once again, but you are seeing unemployment go higher and you are seeing wage inflation go lower. It seems like what's going on with SVB is like the main narrative right now, and people kind of just like brush payrolls aside. Because I do think on that payrolls number, I do think you would see interest rates maybe stay the same or maybe even go a little bit higher because that payrolls number is still high. But we've had this like 30 basis point rally in 10-year and a 20 basis point rally in 2-year, and all of this is definitely coming from what's going on with SVB and the potential contagion effects to banking, to startups. And I think everyone's asking the question now, what happens next? And there are two ways out of this, really. Like one way, SVB gets bought. Okay, JP Morgan seems to be the front runner and the most obvious candidate to buy them because of how large it is. I think they have something like $185 billion in deposits, so SVB is actually pretty huge. Or maybe you get like the Fed coming in to bail them out and some kind of I don't know, like some kind of bailout thing which saves them from going under and saves the mitigates the contagion effect. But obviously, the Fed having to come in and stop that is a big issue as well. So it's not really a great situation. I think we'll have to wait and see what happens over the next 24 hours. But if you think about like every single VC company, like they all know who SVB is. Or most of their portfolio companies probably bank with SVB, and a lot of these guys are involved in crypto. So that as a sentiment impact is a big one. And I think that's why you're seeing the moves you are over the last 24 hours.
Yeah, like it's bad. It's bad. I think this is bigger than just crypto. So like don't just be like, oh, buy the dip, all this sort of stuff. This stuff is more systemic. It feels like it has come slightly out of left field. Obviously, Silvergate went down, but that was more to do with FTX.
Yeah.
This is much bigger. Silvergate is tiny compared to SVB. SVB has 185 billion of deposits. It is massive. It's something like the 20th biggest bank in the United States, or within that sort of range. So definitely big. Now it's a strange scenario because after 2008, all the banks were basically required to increase the number of. So before 2008, how the banking system works is they lend out a bunch of money and then they only keep a percentage of that in deposits. In liquid capital that they can deal with people trying to take their money out. So That's called the fractional banking system. It's the banking system that props up all of capitalism. It's the same reason that, a bank only has to keep a small fraction of the amount of money that it has in deposits at any one time. Before 2008, that figure was quite low, and that a lot of people got annoyed in 2008 that it was way too low. I think it was like less than 5 or less than 8%, or maybe even less than 5%. And after 2008, one of the main regulations that came in was that, right, you've got to increase the amount of money that you're keeping at the banks, right? And it got moved to 10 to 15%. So all banks legally have to keep these high, they call them capital requirements, but it's basically they just need to make sure they have enough money so that if there's ever a bank run, they are protected. Now, there's this weird scenario here where they didn't just have to keep it in cash. They could keep it in treasuries, US government bonds, or mortgage-backed securities. And I guess the best analogy here is to imagine the price of a treasury bond or a mortgage-backed security is like a roller coaster. It basically starts and ends at the same spot, right? And it can go up and down, but it'll always end at the same spot. And what the regulator said was that we don't care about what happens to the price of the bonds you put it into, these treasuries, or what happens to the price of the mortgage-backed securities. You can still just show it on your balance sheet at where it's going to end, right? So if it starts at 100 and it goes up to 110, it goes down to 50, it goes up to 120, it's always 100 on your balance sheet. And the issue has now become is that over the last year, the price of all these securities that everyone put their money into is at the down bit of that roller coaster. So they're at like 60 or 70. And what happened is that banks with, I would guess, more precarious funding mixes, you would say, people that are banking for startups, which quite frankly are losing quite a lot of money right now, or are desperate need of money, they started to realize that the money that they had, they'd actually have to, it wasn't just in cash, right? So they'd have to sell these actually securities to cover the money that people were demanding. And so they actually, instead of having to hold them until 100, like basically the end of the roller coaster, they had to sell them at 70, right? And so they had to start basically realizing losses, which before that, accounting practices have said they didn't really have to experience. And this isn't just an SVB thing. This is across all of the banking sector. This is an all of the banking sector thing. Every single bank that you know has got this similar situation. Now, not many of them have got the same sort of issues where the majority of their depositors are startups that need their money quite quickly. A lot of them have quite varied funding mixes, like they take money from a ton of different people that don't necessarily desperately need their cash. But this is a very precarious position for the whole of the banking industry. So it's not good. It's not good. But in some ways, and people aren't going to like this, it's so bad that it might be good.
What do you mean?
So if it was just SVB, right? If it was just SVB is the bank of VCs and startups, right? Is the US government going to bail that out? Like, are the US taxpayer going to bail that out? That's a very politically difficult thing to do. It could happen. But I think it could be a tough one to stomach after 2008. If this is SVB, it's First Republic, it's 5 to 10 other banks, this becomes a systemic issue across the US banking system. And then the Fed and the US government might have to act. And suddenly all this very hawkish rhetoric that's been coming out of the Fed would have to do a quick 180. It would have to do a quick 180, which is part of the reason why treasuries are absolutely ripping right now, is because people are saying, well, the Fed's not going to raise rates if you have banks collapsing, right? That would be crazy. So the bet right now, to some extent, is that this could be so bad that the Fed has to completely change its policy. And that's not a very great bull thesis, I would say. Like, it's it's slightly tenuous, and it probably has to get a lot worse before it gets better. So First Republic Bank is down 40% today. It's been halted because of volatility. Obviously, you have SVB down another 60%. There's a host of other regional banks or banks which mainly fund startups or have that sort of precarious funding mix, many commercial style banks that bank small businesses, that could be really affected here. And if that happens, then the Fed, for all its rhetoric over the last 12 months, might have to very, very, very quickly change policy.
That part. And so, sorry, the mic started crackling, but the problem is you were saying something so serious and so important that I didn't want to cut it. And you were like spitting. It's every time Mando starts spitting fire,
It's fire.
we have this like crackling sound that comes into that creeps into his mic, and then you have Ovi that just starts smiling behind a micro. At least I have my mic here, so it's been my thing. Like sometimes just hide the laugh here because definitely the topic is not funny at all, and that's for sure. And so in other news that came in, I mean, there was this thread that this user on Twitter, Yogi, posted that pretty much like broke down all of the stuff that is happening at the moment, claiming there is blood on the streets. I'm going to share some news so others can have color on what's going on. So first, we talked about Silvergate. We covered it at length last week, and then we covered it at length yesterday morning, a little bit now. Then came this. Attorney General of New York calling ETH a security and going after KuCoin for being an unregistered broker and dealer. So here it is. And here, let me get you the part exactly. So here it is. The exact quote says, "This action is one of the first times a regulator is claiming in court that ETH, one of the largest cryptocurrencies available, is a security. The petition argues that ETH, just like Luna and UST, is a speculative asset that relies on the efforts of third-party developers in order to provide profit to the holders of ETH. Because of that, KuCoin was required to register before selling ETH, Luna, or UST." So yesterday, it's like we got bombarded by every side, from mostly from the American government side. So there was that, and at the same time, there was this tax that came out for Bitcoin miners or something, that Biden said something about taxing
30% tax on electricity used to
exactly.
mine Bitcoin. Yeah.
It was like double, right? Like, you know, there was the tax on the
40%
Bitcoin
capital gains tax he was saying earlier as well.
Yeah, there was that, and then there was the 30% tax on Bitcoin miners, and on top of that, we had this that later on top of it. I mean, I don't know, Bando, Ovi, what you guys make of this, but definitely seems like, you know, yesterday was one of those days, right? Where like when when they say right, when it rains it pours. Yesterday definitely was pouring, and today as well, but not so great to see all this attack on Bitcoin and Ethereum. I don't know if you guys have some thoughts on that.
It was not great. Like it's definitely been a grim in the last 24 hours. But I mean, like ETH is down 10%. Like it's down what 15% or 17% in the last week. We've like many people here have been here for at least a year or 2 years, and we've seen ETH drop by like 50 or 60%. So when you zoom out, it's not that big a move. And I think when you zoom out in 5 or 10 years to come, it's not going to be that big a move either. It's going to be a very tiny move. But this is just the game we're in now. This is part of the parcel that you're going to have regulatory FUD. You're going to have these random black swan things. You're going to have fat tails. You're going to have volatility in crypto. It's never going to be up only. And even in bull markets, it's never going to be up only. And like Michael Hannigas saying, lol, this is nothing. And he's absolutely right. Like a 10% move in ETH is really, really nothing. And we saw some big moves last year. We saw some big moves in 2020 during COVID. You speak to people who are in Bitcoin in 2017, 2018, like way bigger moves. And by the way, at that point, like in 2017 or 2015 or wherever, like you're really questioning whether crypto as a whole is going to make it. Like at least now, most of us here realize like how much of a future there is in here and how much money is coming into this space and how many jobs it's creating and how big it is now. And it's easier to feel comfortable holding ETH through this volatility. But imagine holding this shit like 5 years ago or even longer ago when you're just like, wow, like ETH was once upon a time a shitcoin. It's like, how do I know this is going to make it, or this idea is going to work out? You didn't know back then, and that was a much harder trade. So, I think what we're seeing right now is like just it's expected volatility given everything that's going on, but it's really not that bad compared to the way stuff has been in the last while.
So I understand what you're saying when it's in terms of like price action, not that bad. I mean, here's a chart. Of course, we've seen where like if you it looks terrible, but if you do this, then I understand that not that bad argument, and you're right, but it's just like it's not that bad, but it's also not good.
Right. Yeah.
Like this, like when you read this, like I keep pulling this up because it is what it is. Like when these people are trying to turn ETH like to be a security, and when they're like attacking Bitcoin, claiming that like they want to tax miners more, like it just makes you like it's just like I read a tweet from someone today. He's a big collector and a friend of mine. He tweeted something along the lines like, for the first time in my life, I am looking into moving myself, my family, my business outside of America. You know what I mean? Like, and I saw his tweet from, I think it was Defiance, right? Something like that. And it's just stuff like that. It's not the first time I see it. I mean, I saw, what was it? DC Investor tweeted something interesting the other day. He said, who is going to be the next, finance capital of the world? Because clearly not going to be New York anymore, right? It's like stuff like that, it's, I don't know. It
feels like a red herring to me, though. This doesn't feel like why we've just sold off. Like, honestly, I think this is they've tried to call it they've been trying to insinuate it's a security for a while. Gary Gensler literally,
of course,
wrote another thread yesterday, basically trying to say that it could be a security. Everything could be a security. He's basically saying the real thing here is the banking crisis. Remember, every single major recession for the last 100 years has had a credit crisis. Right, you've had defaults rise, and the worst ones are in the banking sector. And up until 2 days ago, the banking sector, to me, didn't look so bad. Like, they were definitely better funded than they were in 2008. Particularly the big banks, the big like too big to fail ones, were better funded. The reason why we are down this amount is because of the fears about the banking system, and that this could lead to a more broader credit crisis.
Okay, no, that makes sense. It's just like, it just feels like
this is bad, but it's like it's also one of these ones where if on a positive day you just ignore it. You do not ignore what's going on in the US banking system right now. That it could really spiral, and I don't think it's crypto specific. This is broader than that.
Yeah. Do you want to know who was telling people a month ago to buy SVB shares?
I saw that.
Oh, yeah.
Mistakenly concerned about. SVB is the old Silicon Valley Bank. Recently bought one of our favorite research firms, Nathanson, and it's become less dependent upon private equity and venture capitalism offerings. Wait a second. Those dried up last year. They could come back. Yeah, some of them come back here with a...
I have to stop it because it's actually so frustrating to watch this guy or to hear him speak. So I saw that about Jim Cramer. 1 month ago, Jim Cramer urged investors to buy Silicon Valley Bank stock SIVB, saying it was still cheap and has room to run. Stock's value has since dropped 66%, following concerns that the bank is on the brink of collapsing. This is not great. I don't know if you guys saw the news. Pardon me? Go ahead.
SVB will default by probably the end of today.
There was a news an hour ago, actually, that came out just before we started the show.
Just to put
as in a buyer. Yeah.
The scale of this thing, let's put it into scale. It has 185 billion of deposits, and the market cap is 3 billion. 3 billion. Like, it, the market cap's going to go because they're going to run out of cash. If you had any of your money with SVB, and I've spoken to people who have have startups, everyone is trying to get their money out of SVB.
Yeah.
And that's 185 billion. Do you think they're just going to come up with that money? It will default by the end of today. The only way that it survives is that JP Morgan comes in and buys it for $1 a share.
They're trying to sell it. I mean, it's trying to sell itself. That's the news that came out.
I know, but that's a distressed sale. Like, that's the only way it survives, in my opinion. Probably even less than $1 a share. Like, this is going to be when you have a bank run like this, and every single person is trying to get their money out. It's going to go.
It's wow. It's one of those weeks, right? It's one of those weeks. We had too good of a run so far in 2023, despite like with regards to how like the global economy was and how good NFTs and crypto were holding up. I think we were bound for some shakeup. I wasn't expecting it to be this New York State claiming ETH as security, and that the United States government trying to say that Bitcoin miners should be should be taxed 30% or whatnot. But here we are, and here's what's happening. And it is what it is. At the end of the day, I feel like they are getting more and more scared of what's being built here. I really enjoyed. I shared yesterday the advert from Coinbase. I really enjoyed it. I don't know if you guys got the time to watch it. I'll link you guys so you can watch it after this. But they put this ad out, which is like why per se like we need like crypto, and like in under a minute they pretty much explain to people why crypto's good and why you need it in terms of like micro payments, transactions, and being able to actually like get your money.
It is a great advert, that.
Yeah.
And it's a great time. Like, the ironic thing about all of this is that this actually shows the value of crypto.
Yeah.
The idea. So the whole of capitalism is based on this fractional banking system. To put it into perspective, FTX had about 40% of users' deposits when it went under. SVB has 10%. And that's probably the case for every single bank in America and probably in the world, right? The whole of the US, the whole of every capitalist country is based on the fractional banking system. So when banks go, they can go very, very rapidly and very, very quickly.
Yeah.
The idea that you have, like, if you have your money in if you had your money in SVB right now, where would you want to put it? Like, where would you actually want to put it? You want to put it into another bank that, again, could be under the same thing. You're gonna put your money into First Republic. You're gonna put your money into, I don't know, JP Morgan or one of these other banks. Like, they all have the same game. Like, you actually, ironically, might be right. I want to put this into Bitcoin. I want to put this into ETH. Like, these are decentralized forms of value. They do not run on the fractional banking system. It's so ironic that crypto is getting absolutely torched because it is involved with a lot of the companies here, but the actual value of crypto here couldn't be more obvious.
Some people are saying gold, some people are saying apes. Oh my. Yeah, I guess we'll see what the weekend's got in store for us on the crypto side. As it is Friday, it's a grim little Friday, but we'll see how things hold up here. Before we get to, I'm gonna send Kevin his invite up, but before we get to our interview with our special guest of the day, Kevin Owocki, is there even anything going on in NFT land? Do I play the jingle? Is there something going on? Okay, let's play it.
Who is the man, macro daddy of the land? Can you dig it?
I mean, we can bring up the screen, but it's
yeah, I will. It's just not much.
Everything's down. Like, Blur is now at 40 cents. I saw some crazy stat by 9059.
What?
It's like the total number of trades ever in the Bored Ape Yacht Club is, where do you just put it out now? So total lifetime trades since mint, Bored Apes 33,000, right? That's how many times Bored Apes have traded in totality. Gitcoin Presents has traded 24,000. So
Machi owning all of the supply now.
There's crazy volumes going through in terms of numbers on a lot of different collections. That's obviously been the main one. We're obviously got Kevin coming on to talk about that one. But in terms of number of trades, it was 4,000 even over the last 24 hours. You can see. It's unsurprising that NFTs are quite a bit lower. I think you'll see here top projects outperform. I think the ones that are perhaps less dependent on some of the Blur farming as well will outperform. It's that whole narrative as we spoke about yesterday, where it's a game of shrinking musical chairs now, probably for the next month or so. And Ape, where's Ape now?
ApeCoin?
3.9.
No idea. Yeah.
3.9.
Yeah.
So, like, again, a lot of these narratives around yielding assets for for Yuga assets is expiring. I think we're in for a difficult 2 or 3 weeks here.
Yeah. Definitely seems so, right? Everything's down. But this is what happens every time we have like, these big like black swan events, or could we call them black swan? I guess somewhat, like, these big macro events that are in the negative. Like in the first few days, people are scared, right? Try to stable out or try to play ETH instead of playing crypto NFTs, right? I mean, I don't blame them. You know what I mean? It's like, hey, maybe there's a better up buying Ether than buying your favorite NFT, which you're not sure may do good. And this is the times where you usually see people get out of NFTs and actually so that they could trade just pure crypto. Because you have an opportunity to get. I mean, you could have you had the ETH went as low as what, 13 in the high 13s last night, man, something like that, and it's still in the low 14s, and it could go lower, right? And we're not crystal ball experts or whatever, but but it is what it is, right? And I personally think it's more tempting to buy ETH than to buy NFTs, unless you're like trying to snipe some grails or snipe your favorite artist's work and whatnot, which now, like, obviously the price in USD could be denominated a little lower, but that's usually like what I do. Like, either buy ETH or I look for NFTs that I could perhaps not buy or warrant my price range before that. But hang tight, everyone. NFT MFers, hang tight.
Yeah, I don't think it's the time to buy NFTs where people are offering to sell them. It's where you should be bidding for them and see if you get hit, right? That's kind of what you want to be doing.
It's definitely time to buy Rug Radio NFTs. Always is a good time to buy Rug Radio NFTs. But besides that, definitely don't recommend Rec Guys and DGens and Ovi's like, dude, Ovi.
Rec Guys, this one to buy. You just get wrecked.
Exactly. How come every time you have a drop, the market has a black swan event?
Dude, I don't know what it is.
This is the second time in a row you have an art drop during a black swan event.
No, this is like the third or the fourth time. Yeah, like, and it's kind of annoying for me as well because it obviously means like no one buys it. But I guess it's also part of the law.
How's your drop going? Is it all good? How's it going on your side?
It shuts at 6:30 p.m. Eastern tonight, so there's still a few hours left.
I'm waiting. You know me. I'm waiting. I got my airdrop. Thank you for being a full set Rec City holder. I got the Bangkok piece. I was really happy. And that was super fun. Yeah, it's cool. Here, let me show this quick, and then we'll get a Kevin who also joined us. Yeah, I see him in the background on YouTube. They're all red. It's funny, right? Because they're programmed to be red. They're programmed to be red with the market, right?
Yeah.
So all your cities are red. Yeah. This is so crazy. Hold on, let me go check out like all the ones on OpenSea from the vault. Here, check this out. Look at this, everyone. So the funny thing about OSF's Rec City is they follow the market, right? Showing the Bangkok one I received yesterday was all colorful and stuff, and now it's all red. Like, it's green, it's purple, it's yellow. Oh my god. Oh my god, that is it. I shouldn't be laughing, but I love how the art is programmed with the market. I think there's something to it. But anyways, we are joined both on YouTube and on Twitter Spaces by the man, the myth, the legend, the co-founder of Gitcoin, the founder of Supermodular, one of the icon of the Ethereum blockchain, Kevin Owocki. Kevin, good morning, GM. How you doing?
GM, so good to be here. Just hoping I can match your energy at some point during the show.
Yeah, I'm hoping I'm even gonna be able to keep up. I was telling Mando before, so I'm like, you got me, right? It's like, yeah, I always got you. I'm like, yeah, it's just that when the guests get really big, it's weird about me. And I've been doing this for a long time now, every day for over 2 years. But when the guests get bigger, there's always this like little thing. Kevin, it's a pleasure to have you. You were quite the topic of conversation this week, actually, in the NFT space.
Okay.
With the Gitcoin Presents NFT. So it was funny that the timing of it, because obviously, like, we've tried to have Kevin on our show forever, and Kevin has got to be the busiest man on the Ethereum blockchain, aside probably from Vitalik. And so we booked this interview out months back, and it's so funny the timing, because then the whole Gitcoin Presents NFT thing happened, and then I was looking at the weekly guest, and I was like, wait, we have Kevin coming on Friday.
Yeah, the timing's kind of funny. Well, yeah, I could give a little rundown on what I've been up to, but let me know where you want to take the combo.
Yeah. We'll go over this. We'll get the rundown on everything been up to and whatnot. But first and foremost, I mean, our audience is mostly NFT focused, of course, and obviously the Web3 MFers. But just quickly, for the people that are in Twitter Spaces, I want y'all to know at the top is pinned the link to the YouTube. So if you want to watch us all on YouTube, OSF, Mando, Kevin, and myself, we're all on YouTube. We could be sharing some stuff on the screen. There's also a chat going on that we see on our right-hand side. So if you have any questions for Kevin, you can always feel free to fire them out on the YouTube stream, as we'll be live until noon. And if not, we're live on Spaces as well, as usual. So make sure you share the Twitter Space and let the people know that we're live. So Kevin, I mean, let's get right into it. I'm going to ask you the same question that I ask every single special guest that we've had for the last over 300 days on this show is, are you ready for this? Who is Kevin Owocki?
Well, so I'm a software engineer by training and have a degree in computer science from University of Delaware in 2006. Been building software projects all my life. I guess I'm most known as the founder of Gitcoin, which is a place that you can get coins if you're working on Ethereum infrastructure or diversity, equity, inclusion, or climate change, or we've done some funding rounds for Ukrainian education efforts. And so basically we just care about funding things that are called public goods, things that everyone uses, but no one ever pays for because they don't have a business model. So Gitcoin is a place that you can get coins. And I guess, who is Kevin Owocki within the context of the Ethereum ecosystem? I'm known as the founder of Gitcoin. I worked on it from 2017 to 2022. Which for those of you who are skilled at math, that was last year. I disaffiliated from Gitcoin because it's a DAO, decentralization of power, but also decentralization of stress for me by decentralizing it into a DAO. And so Gitcoin now has its own governance forum at gov.gitcoin.co, which is where all the decisions are made. Disclosure, I hold GTC, which is the governance token of the Gitcoin network, but I'm not in charge of the Gitcoin network. I'm just one node in the network. And I, like you, was following the Gitcoin Presents NFT campaign from the audience. So I've watched it. I've been a big fan of Vitalik and Glenn and Zoe and quadratic funding for a long time, which was kind of the core narrative behind the drop. We can get into that. But yeah, I am no longer in charge of Gitcoin, but I am its founder emeritus.
That's super cool. Really inspiring because this is literally the way we're trying to go about Rug Radio, right? Rug Radio is a DAO. It's a decentralized media ecosystem, and we're practicing like progressive decentralization, which is over a span of 5 years. We're trying to do exactly what you did with Gitcoin, which is like at some point I just want to be another node, another holder, another creator within the Rug DAO ecosystem. And then the people can actually own its narrative and its course, right? How long did you think it took for you to go from like really putting the ship to sea and like going hands off? It was 4 years?
2017 to 2022. Okay. So I guess about 5 years of building it into a household name in the Web3 ecosystem, and disaffiliated formally in summer of 2022. So we're going on 9 months of the kids off to college. Hope it doesn't flunk out of classes and stuff like that. But yeah, it's been a lot of, I've written 130 posts on gov.gitcoin.co just to like decentralize my brain and my ethos into Gitcoin. So Gitcoin's more complicated than a lot of projects, but I really believe that decentralizing your context and your vision and everything is a big part of progressive decentralization.
Yeah, no, I love that. I'm sharing on the screen for those of you on YouTube, the gov.gitcoin.co, and it's obviously Kevin's account. And it says, I spin bits for fun and profit. Watch out for my megabyte. And so there's definitely a lot of good reads. 145 topics created, 343 posts created. So I love when you say decentralizing your brain. And I think that's really interesting. I mean, what made you initially what made you come up with the idea of Gitcoin and the idea of wanting to decentralize that brain?
Yeah. Well, I'll start with in 2017, I started Gitcoin because I wanted software developers to have a way to get coins, pun intended, to work on open source software. And basically, I wanted to disintermediate recruiters and create a marketplace where open source developers could kind of like go on a test drive with their favorite open source project, and like a paid test drive, like you're earning while you do it. And so that was the genesis behind Gitcoin. It evolved a lot between 2017 and 2022. We actually pivoted our core product in 2019 to be Gitcoin Grants, which is a crowdfunding application in the Ethereum ecosystem. And when we adopted quadratic funding, which is a mechanism that Vitalik and Glenn and Zoe invented, it started to grow like wildfire, like I had never seen before. But to answer your second question, why did we decentralize Gitcoin? I'm lucky enough and privileged enough to say that people were starting to consider Gitcoin to be a significant pillar of the Ethereum ecosystem, because so many projects were getting their first checks, or I guess their first transactions from Gitcoin. And if you're going to be the public goods funding, open source funding infrastructure, or one of the open source funding infrastructures for the ecosystem, then you need to have what's called credible neutrality. Basically, you need to be able to, like a protocol instead of a platform. No one should have admin rights, like pseudo access over that platform, because people want to be able to trust that the mechanism is routing capital to their favorite projects, and there's no one who even has access behind the scenes to alter the system without governance control. So Vitalik has a blog post about why projects should decentralize, and he says credible neutrality, censorship resistance, or if you have better decision making in a democratic environment. Gitcoin just happens to have credible neutrality and better decision making in a decentralized environment, and that's why we decided to go on the long road to decentralize it from a centralized platform and a company into a DAO and a protocol. So I'm actually no longer at Gitcoin because I've disaffiliated because of that DAO decentralization. I'm now building a company called Supermodular, which is a venture studio working in a similar adjacent ecosystem. But yeah, to answer your question, that's why we decentralized Gitcoin.
Wow, this is really cool. I love that. So it's just got so big, and in the way it was doing so much good that it's like kind of like giving it to the people, and like seeing like how the people can like self-govern and like help the whole Ethereum blockchain ecosystem, which is pretty much the premise on which Vitalik built the entire thing.
So there's an idea in political philosophy that goes something like the consent of the governed is only the legitimate use, the only reason for legitimate use of state power. So you want to have this like closed loop where the government needs the consent of the governed to do anything. And I think that from political philosophy, that's like a really important idea. And if you look at Web 2 and you look at the giant FANG companies, you basically have the shareholders who are controlling everything. So if we were to continue being a company, you would have your shareholders on one side of you and your users on another, and the shareholders would be like, yo, extract from them, spy on them, get us as much returns as possible. And I like the idea of that being a closed loop instead, where the people who've used the platform are actually governing the platform or delegating to someone who's governing the platform. And like the opposite of consent to the governed is the divine right of kings, which is like in the feudal ages when we moved from the divine right of kings to the consent of the governed into democracy, we actually started to get land rights. There was an explosion of economic growth. And so I'm really excited to going from the divine right of Zuck and Bezos and all the FANG to like actual Web3 platform cooperatives is what I'm really excited about.
Yeah, that's dude. When Mike Kriak told me I would love you, dude, I didn't know he meant it like that. That's Kriak, because Kriak always is great. I mean, I think you guys were all called with him right before this, right? I don't know, but
yeah,
it's just like I think I love Mike, and obviously Mike, came into to Rugwedo to start advising us as strategic advisor in July last year, and then eventually the Mesh, got a bunch of our Rugwedo NFTs because it's the only way to have say on what we're doing is through the NFTs that get your governance token, yada yada yada, right? But it's been really cool. But Mike was telling me a lot of the principles on which we're trying to build is like study Gitcoin, study Kevin Owocki, all along. That's what it's always been. So that's super cool. And so now you said you're building something called Supermodular. So now that Gitcoin is doing its thing. It's doing really well. It's still doing really well, and we're gonna for sure get back to that. Do you want to talk to us about what it is that you're building currently with Supermodular?
Yeah, sounds great. Well, you can see our purpose here is to cultivate a more regenerative digital frontier. We want to take thousands of degens and turn them into regens, which is using crypto for things like funding public goods. And so basically what we're trying to do is build a super modular ecosystem of money Legos for funding public goods, for pro-social causes, for solving existential threats like climate change. And super modularity. Okay, so Farouk, I gotta tell you, man, I have this thing that I do to troll people, which is I name my companies and my projects now after like deeply rooted theoretical concepts in game theory, and super modularity is one. So modularity is the idea that like each individual module has its own contained scope and leadership, but super modular means that like 1 + 1 = 3, or 1 + 1 + 1 = 7, as opposed to submodularity where 1 + 1 = 1.3. So basically you get exponential growth the more modules you add to an ecosystem if they have strategic complements with each other. And that's why the company is called Supermodular, is that we're building for a super modular ecosystem of Web3. I'm really just so bullish on Web3 because 3 hackers can walk into a hackathon and build something over a weekend that it would have taken a bank $100 million to do 10 years ago. It's because of that modularity. It's because of open source code, which is historically decentralizing work and has exponential value to it, that Web3, I think, even has a shot at being a real thing one day. And so super modularity that's why we named the company Supermodular, is because we want to be building exponentially in a Web3 ecosystem that's super modular.
That is sick. I mean, holy shit! And I love the little troll as well with the name. Oh my god, this is so funny. Hold on, I try to share. There you go. I'm trying to share this on the screen. It's something you posted about super modularity as a superpower.
So there you go.
So that's pretty much what you just explained, but in the form of a graphic design. I'm gonna retweet that for the people who want to go and have a look at it on the timeline and save that.
Yep.
But wow, that is super cool, and I love what really like strikes me with you, which is super cool, is obviously like the passion you have for the space, and obviously you've been in this space for longer than we all have, and you're still out here with this. It seems like you have that same passion. Would you say that the passion just grows with time in this space? Because the space can get tough, heavy. We talk about all the government trying to like pretty much pin us down. Like that was a conversation today, was all about how it's like, again, like we're taking it to the chin, but we keep going. So, how do you, what just drives you to continue to go? Because after Gitcoin, you could say, I'm sure you're at a place in life, you could be like, listen, like I've built my thing, I'm good, I can just participate in Gitcoin's governance and I'm set. But like, what makes you want to just keep going with Supermodular and everything you're building?
Well, I mean, it's really intellectually interesting. It's a combination of computer science, game theory, economics, political theory, memes, shit posting. It's the intersection of all of those things wrapped up in sort of like a postmodern way of engaging. And so I just find it to be the most stimulating place to be. But I also like truly believe in my heart of hearts that crypto can regenerate the world. And that by building a super modular ecosystem, a financial system that's controlled by the poor and the many over the rich and the few in Wall Street, that we can make a lot of change that's good for democracy. And it's going to be a rocky ride to get there. But I think that all the first principles are there to decentralize the financial system, to open source the financial system, to create more transparency. And like we can now program our values into our money. That's like fucking pulling the stone, like the sword from the stone. I just think that there's so much power and opportunity there. The problem is that I think the ecosystem has too much associated with like short-term pump and dump stuff, and not enough association with like long-term greedy, funding public goods, building communities for the long term. And so if we can like program the right values into our money, I think it's the highest upside thing for humanity. And that's what keeps me showing up every day to work on this space. Like, and I also want to acknowledge, like, I hate it when I get put on, when I talk about how crypto can regenerate the world and someone puts me on a panel called How Crypto is Regenerating the World. It's like SBF, Do Kwon, like Mashinsky, all this fucking bullshit like that has happened so far. You're like, don't compare a 5 or 10-year-old financial system to a 300-year-old financial system, since the East India Corporation. Like there's a lot of growing up to do in the Web3 space also. So I also want to be like tepid in my enthusiasm and say that like, I don't think it's happening yet. So I do believe that it could happen. And it's my job, I think, to rotate as much capital and talent and resources towards regen stuff and build a movement around that. And that's why I keep showing up every day. But it's a roller coaster for sure. I mean, I was listening to the pod before I joined, and just like all the shit with SVB and the financial collapse, like that isn't even crypto related. But I was like, man, I'm gonna have to come on and like optimism pill these guys after a shitty week in the markets. But I still remain optimistic because I don't know, the short term swings go up and down, but long term, I think this is gonna be really good for the world.
I mean, you can definitely come and optimism pill us on the show whenever you want, and you're definitely welcome to come every time to just like get that little. Like we should do a 10-minute segment with Kevin Owocki every other week, or every time there's something bad going on for you to regens everybody into the space. Because I definitely I feel like running through a wall right now. I got all the conviction for the rest of the year. Mando, to you.
Yeah, so I guess my question then becomes: so what do you think is the end game? I see a lot of talk about funding public goods, like using this to fund things. So maybe what has Gitcoin funded maybe in the past, and like where do you see also your funding or the funding of the ecosystem going? I know you obviously don't direct that fully, but yeah, this concept of funding of public goods, I see a lot, and I just want to see kind of where that vision ends, or like what is the kind of end goal?
Right. Well, yeah, so I think that there's a lot packed up in there. I'm wondering if I should tell you why quadratic funding is so powerful, or if I should talk about the end game first. I feel like it'd be more credible if I talked a little bit about quadratic funding, and then I can talk about the end game.
Yeah, why not?
Okay, cool. So quadratic funding, actually the Gitcoin NFT drop was re-signed papers of the quadratic funding paper. Glenn Weil, Vitalik Buterin, and Zoe Hitzig wrote the quadratic funding paper, and basically what it is a mechanism for democratically funding public goods. And so basically the way it works is that we raise a matching campaign, and by we I mean like the royal we. The Gitcoin ecosystem raises typically between $1 million and $3 million per quarter, and then that's distributed to the results of a crowdfunding campaign according to who has the broadest base of support. So if Farouk raises $100 from 100 contributors, and I raise $1 or $100 from one contributor, Farouk gets 99% of the matching pool. We raise the same amount of money, but you have a broader base of support, Farouk. And so basically what you're doing is you're measuring which projects in the ecosystem have the broadest base of support and allocating capital to that. So basically what you're doing is you're pushing power to the edges away from whales and central power brokers, and you're funding the ecosystem public goods, things like open source software, which we all use, but we never pay for because there's no business model for them. You're funding them in the most democratic way possible. So Vitalik and go ahead.
Quadratic voting, right? But quadratic fund, because a lot of people are familiar with quadratic voting, so it's a similar.
Yeah. It's right? Quadratic voting is the same as quadratic funding, except with quadratic funding, you're voting with your money instead of with like your vote credits. So anyway, Vitalik and Glenn and Zoe are like these big brains, and I feel like they gave me this like alien crystal of energy, and I'm just like, putting a neon vaporwave brand on it. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I said it must be nice working next to these people.
Yeah, well, I just feel very blessed. Like I'm standing on the shoulders of giants, and like that's kind of the whole point of open source software, right? Open source software creates $400 billion per year in economic value. StreamYard, which we're using right now, uses open source behind the scenes, right? Creates $400 billion per year in economic value, but there's no business model for it. So the people who are building open source software have to go work at like fucking JP Morgan to pay their bills. And like, what if we could just pay people for working on open source software, pay people for working in the commons? I think that's like one of the big promises of crypto is what if we could redirect MEV or layer 2 sequencer fees or donations to incentivize people to work directly in the commons? And I'm not talking about NGOs. NGOs have huge administrative overhead and bloat, and the CEO makes like $20 million a year. I'm talking about impact DAOs, like decentralized networks with low overhead that route money to people who are doing good work. And I think that, like, Mando, this is why I wanted to explain quadratic funding first, is that quadratic funding is an example of a coordination mechanism that can route capital to people who are doing good work. And the more money that we can like route through coordination mechanisms that just fund people who are working in the commons, the more we pay down cynicism, the more we create a sense of civic pride in the 21st century, and the more I think we regenerate the world with crypto. So like that's kind of like the how it bleeds into the end game.
So is it like quadratic funding is a heightened form of democracy almost?
So it is one, and I really want to strike a note of pluralism here, because there is retroactive public goods funding, there's quadratic funding, quadratic voting, there's dominance assurance contracts, there's conviction voting. Web3, like there's just gonna be so many different coordination mechanisms that help us regenerate our communities and our commons, and quadratic funding is only one of them. But yes, to answer your question, it's like, what if we could take democracy from voting in the ballot box every 2 or 4 years to looking at the data about what we value every single day from our high resolution data, like the data emissions we have on the internet. So high resolution democracy in the 21st century, I think, is like a pretty gnarly idea.
So, and do you think that that's applicable to various different forms of democracy and maybe even capitalism in general? Like, do you think is your view that like the organizational form should be governed by quadratic funding as well then?
I love quadratic funding, but I'm the founder of Gitcoin. My life's work is built on top of it. I mean, I did a bunch of shit before this, but no one cares about that now. I don't think quadratic.
I'm going to ask you about it next, so you can hang tight.
Cool. That's great. Yeah, to ask me about the dating site I ran in my 20s. But quadratic funding is one of a pluralism of mechanisms that will help us route resources to the most important things, and I think it's great. But I also think retroactive public goods funding is great. I think there's lots of other great mechanisms too.
What exactly is the other things that you were just saying, like retroactive public goods funding?
Oh man, so retroactive public goods funding is.
We've got half an hour, so we might as well just go for it.
You might as well go for it. It's tough to get. It's tough to get Kevin Owocki, so we're gonna squeeze those lemons.
OSF has finished his snack.
He even put his glasses on this morning. OSF put his glasses on. That's how serious this has gotten.
Full concentration here. Full concentration.
Yeah, no, you put on glasses, people think you're smart. That's my actual real tip.
Do you think these are real? Of course.
Yeah. Oh, you just lost like 10 IQ points, Brooke. Sorry. What did you ask me? Oh, retroactive public goods funding or other mechanisms?
A number of other things that you thought were alongside quadratic funding. Like what are they, and why are they better in certain instances?
Yeah, totally. So basically, I believe that from first principles, like we now have programmable money, and if we value public goods, if we value our communities, we can program our values into our money. And so we're exploring the mechanism design space of how we can program our values into our money and create a more regenerative digital frontier, which remember is Supermodular's purpose. So let's just talk about one, retroactive public goods funding. So basically the idea here is that it's easier to say retroactively whether a public good is good or not. Like for example, if I invent a new open source module, then it's hard for you to say speculatively, oh, this is going to be valuable. But if in 10 years it's got 100,000 forks and downloads, then you can say, oh, it's valuable. So the key insight here is that it's easier to know what's going to regenerate the commons after it happens than before it happens. And then what you do is you take a bunch of money and you just give it to the most valuable public goods retroactively. So this is something that Optimism is doing. They're dropping 20 million OP on Ethereum public goods. Remember, public goods are just goods that like are open source. They have no business model, but they're still good for the world. Optimism is dropping 20 million OP, which is worth $40 million US via retroactive public goods funding. And basically what they're doing is they're creating a financial incentive for future people who are creating public goods to eventually have an exit and to eventually have revenue. And so like the big idea here is like, if we can get enough MEV rewards and sequencer fees, like imagine a world in which $100 million or $1 billion per year is retroactively rewarded to public goods. Then the VCs start waking up and they're saying, holy fucking shit, I can fund open source software and climate tech and things that are good for the world. And I can have an exit for that. Sign me up. So you take the whole problem with like NGOs and impact DAOs is that like, the funding that they raise is not always connected to the impact they create. So what if you could get the whole private capital allocation ecosystem, VCs and angels, to start funding public goods? You start to leverage the market intelligence of that infrastructure, but you start doing it for the commons instead of like the next photo sharing app or the next alt layer one or whatever the fuck else VCs are funding these days. And so retroactive funding goods or public goods funding is like a way of changing the game by creating an exit for public goods funding. And it's just a matter of like, how can we measure which public goods are good and how can we drop enough money on them? And Optimism is kind of the epicenter of retroactive public goods right now.
So I like that concept, but how do you, because obviously with I don't know, non-public goods or like more capitalist societies, you work out who's done the best because they make the most money. How do you then work out who's had the most impact from a public goods perspective and particularly like retroactive as well?
Yeah, I mean, that's the billion ETH question. And so this is an iterative design space. Gitcoin Grants is on Gitcoin Grants round 15, and we're going through Gitcoin. And I've been the royal we. I got to get out of the habit of saying we when I talk about Gitcoin. I am disaffiliated now, but basically every round we go through an OODA loop. We observe how the mechanism is working. We orient how we want to change it. We decide how it's going to be changed, and then we act on it. So you're updating the mechanism, this like iterative loop. And we've done 15 iterations of quadratic funding on Gitcoin. Optimism is on optimistic retroactive public goods funding round 2. So basically what they're doing is, to actually answer your question, they're iterating towards that, figuring out that question. But like right now, what they've got is they've got what are called Citizen House, which is basically just people who understand open source ecosystem in the Ethereum ecosystem, and they're letting you vote on which projects they want to fund there. So basically they're relying on experts to say which ones they want to do. Does that scale? No. Does it work for round 2? Yes. They're going to iterate towards something that scales for all of humanity. I don't know, by optimistic retroactive public goods funding round 100 in 2030 or something like that.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting. So I guess the second bit of the original question was, I can kind of already see where this is maybe going now a bit more, but yeah, what did you think is the end goal for all of this? Like, how is this how Ethereum scales, maybe even better than things like DeFi or NFTs? Is this the real use case of Ethereum in your eyes, or your views in the future?
I mean, I'm a pluralist at heart. I believe that crypto can regenerate the world, but really, I mean, so we can program our values into our money, and so whatever financial system or use case you're interested in, Web3 is like a mirror that reflects back to us ourselves. And so if you're into decentralized finance, then how crypto is changing the world is decentralized finance. If you're into art funding, it's NFTs. If you're someone who lives in Nigeria or Eastern Europe, and you can't work off of Upwork because they're going to seize your payment between the Western bank of the company that hired you and your bank, then you can use Gitcoin in order to make a living that's like 10x more than you would make we have these people on the Gitcoin network. If you think that crypto is going to change the way that we fund public goods, there's $10 trillion a year in the United States alone that governments and nonprofits spend on public goods, but they're so fucking inefficient. What if we could disrupt that with an ecosystem of impact DAOs that are better at using decentralized collective intelligence to deploy that capital to the world than, some bureaucratic nonprofit that has high administrative overhead? So Web3 is a mirror that reflects back your own values. And the reason my value set is like, holy shit, industrial age capitalism is kind of like, this is getting into my own worldview, so take it with a grain of salt. Everything I said before was meant to be kind of a little bit more neutral, but my own worldview is that industrial age capitalism is not working anymore. Our democratic institutions are captured. People are declining faith in them. What if we could build new information age institutions around the commons, a new information age civic pride around the work that we're doing in open source and on the internet? And what if we could route capital to the people who are creating value in it, and away from the Ponzi schemers and the pump and dumpers, build a decentralized immune system to keep those people out, and then route the capital towards the people who are regenerating the commons and communities and creating information age institutions. This is a fucking Bretton Woods moment for the Web3 ecosystem, where the world is changing rapidly, and we need to build new if the industrial age capitalism is like the Titanic sinking, then we at the base level need lifeboats. It'd be better if we had bigger boats. And what if we could create a decentralized, credibly neutral, uncorruptible hyperstructure, I don't know, like a battleship that we can move people over to and have them have faith in their civic institutions again. To me, that's the end game. But I'm clearly drinking my own Kool-Aid a little bit over here too. So
great Kool-Aid, bro. I'm gonna tell you, pass me some of that Kool-Aid. Hold on. Here.
Yeah. Well, I got to warn you, you've already been Kool-Aid pilled if you bought the Gitcoin NFT. So that's our second little troll, I think, from the regen ecosystem to the degen ecosystem.
tell us more about that? Because I have it and I sent it into my vault yesterday. And you know, and I genuinely wanted to have my one because I was like, you know, I don't like this is sick. And you know, there's obviously it's been the talk of the space. I mean, and the NFT side of things, like, you know, whenever there's a big thing like that, it's all we talk about because there's not that much going on either right now, especially in this macro and crypto climate. But tell me about this troll. So the second troll is that there. I love how you're just tweeting at the bottom right of our space at the same time and just putting all of these resources. I'm pinning them all for everybody. How many monitors do you have? Because you probably have one of these insane setups. Like you got.
I'm sorry for multitasking, but it's because I'm tweeting. I wrote a book about all this stuff. I wrote a presentation that I just gave at ETH Denver about this. So I just wanted your community to have that resource.
No, this is good. I'm grateful for that. And I'm pinning everything, I'm retweeting everything. Actually, Q in the audience said, best rug video conversation this year with Owocki, probably ever. He started off saying that he didn't have the energy as you guys, but he is more hyped than all of you. To which
I'm not a slow bird. Yeah,
but it means the opposite. You've got me completely shook. Like, I don't know where to go next with the interview, but I will go. And now I know where to go next because you took it there with the Gitcoin NFT. You said that's the second troll that we, you know, now we have the Gitcoin NFT. So tell me what you mean by that. And what is the purpose goal? Because obviously everyone and their mother's NFT space talked about it. The whole topic conversation was about Vitalik's involvement in this and yada, yada, yada. So do you want to maybe tell me what you meant by that?
Totally. Okay. So the end game from my perspective is to use crypto to regenerate our common spaces to fund public goods. Basically, and by the way, I just have to remind everyone, I've disaffiliated from Gitcoin. I was not involved in the Gitcoin NFT at all, but I know just what's public like you all. So basically what Gitcoin was trying to do was to use that NFT to fund the matching pool, to which the matching pool goes 100% to public goods funding. And basically what that NFT launched was, it was a signed version of the quadratic funding paper by Vitalik and Zoe and Glenn, who are the people who are the people who wrote the paper. So it's basically their intellectual property. Gitcoin got them to sign it and then to release some limited edition NFTs of that to the community as NFTs. So basically, and again, like, this is all Gitcoin doing it. This is only public information that I have about the launch. You know, while we're talking about the NFT, I just want to say that, like, as far as I know, Vitalik just signed a paper with the QF paper on it. This is not a Vitalik NFT. This is not a Vitalik airdrop or anything like that. His only involvement was just signing a paper and allowing that money to go to the matching pool. So just wanted to make sure that I go on record on that.
Can't ask the devs to do something. You tell me I can't ask the devs to do something about the NFT and Vitalik does something for real.
I mean, I think you can follow the EIP governance process, which is the unsexy answer. This doesn't get you any early access to Vitalik. I'm sorry, Farouk.
Damn it.
So, and you know, like, I know that we're kind of shitposting about this, but, like, you know, Vitalik, the thing you have to realize about Vitalik is that in 2017, every project was listing him as an advisor and using his social cred in order to raise money. And Gitcoin, I only know this from my experience working at like, I was always very tepid about asking for Vitalik's endorsement on anything, because I know he's been burned so many times, and I just don't want the community to get the wrong impression about this NFT drop. He was generous enough to sign the QF paper, and you know, so please just don't ask him for any special access related to the NFT or anything.
We're also shit posting. When 659 tweeted out, it was so funny. I'm trying to scroll because he tweets a lot.
I saw it. Yeah.
Yeah, when he said just bought the Vitalik Buterin Gitcoin NFT so that I can, for the first time in history, properly ask, can the devs do something?
Yeah. Well, you know, I don't know. Maybe I feel a special amount of empathy for Vitalik, because, like, I'm just this, like, introverted nerd who's, like, kind of a niche celebrity now. Like, but Vitalik's that on, like, 1,000 more scale, and so just, like, I think that he's really trying to figure out how to navigate his role in the ecosystem, and I just always want to respect his boundaries. And, like, also he's fucking crushing it, dude. Proof of stake and account abstraction and withdrawal. Like, he's not doing that, the ecosystem around him, but he's built an incredible ecosystem around him, and I just think it's so inspiring. But anyway, so you were asking me a question about the NFT drop, and we went down this Vitalik rabbit hole.
You said, and by the way, I love the rabbit hole of Vitalik. Just so you know, he's like our number one target on this show. It's not Elon, it's not some super celebrity, whatever. It's Vitalik Buterin. Like, he's like at the top. We've gone close, got Hayden Adams, we've got you. We're we're scratching the surface here, trying to get to Vitalik, and it'll happen in due time. And honestly, and you're right about what makes us an Ethereum company is the fact that we're proud to be building on this blockchain because of everything Vitalik has done. It's not like Vitalik is building it for us, but like without him, we wouldn't be building what we're doing on this chain.
This brings me back to long-term games. It's like Vitalik had a vision of how he wanted the world to be with like smart contracts and everything. And he could have just like Dan Larimer'd it by like raising a bunch of money and then like exiting with it. But he didn't. And I think that, I think he really believes, I think everything he says on stage, he really believes. And that's what I look for in a leader is like someone who's going to say the same thing to insiders as outsiders and someone who's, truly believes in the mission of what they're building. And like, honestly, quadratic funding is just like, you can look at the history of early Ethereum projects and like, Vitalik Ethereum. Vitalik published a paper on AMMs and that became Uniswap. Published a paper on quadratic funding that became Gitcoin. Like, just hang out on ETH Research, the research forums, and you get like alpha of what the coolest new mechanisms are in the ecosystem over the next couple of years.
It's so crazy because most people think that they have like, I think that's something Sobi, he's a friend of ours, and I host a night show with him, but he keeps telling people, it's like, yo, like spend more time like actually reading those research papers because this is where you're actually going to get the alpha on crypto and whatever and decision on where we're going before everybody else. Because most people won't make the time to go read the Vitalik Buterin or on the Gitcoin research papers, like whatever it is, like or read about what's happening, but it's all there. And what I love, and you're right, Michael Panagas here saying Vitalik should be on Canadian dollar bills. As a Canadian, as a proud Canadian, I am based in Montreal. I agree. Vitalik Buterin should be on $100 bills, actually. As a matter of fact, this is the highest note that we have over here in Canada. Just quickly, Kevin, and then I'll go to Mando. So a question for you, but you said something early on, just last thing on the Gitcoin NFT thing, then we can move forward. You said something about the troll, like the fact that you have one in your wallet, that's a troll or something.
Why is it a troll?
Yeah.
Okay, so the whole mission is to like regenerate the world with crypto. And there's like maybe I have a podcast called Green Pilled. I should have you on at some point, but there's like 7,000 people who are like deep in regen crypto, which I would say is like the Venn diagram of people who are like earthy and like kind of hippies and want to do good things for the world and like crypto. So there's 7,000 people in that. But the big question is, how do we reach people who aren't down that rabbit hole with our message and our work? And I'm disaffiliated from Gitcoin. I was not involved in the launch, but I think that you'll see the regen ecosystem shipping more things that feel like a hot NFT drop or like a hot new D app. And it's really designed, like the front door feels like that. But like once you get inside, it's actually, you're kind of like being green pilled a little bit and you're kind of interacting with it like it's an NFT, but it's actually like a gateway drug into the regen ecosystem. And that's maybe it's not a troll, but that's like the whole object.
Maybe Trojan horse or something. Well,
the Trojan horse, that's it. But yeah, so the connection here is that all of the money from this campaign went to the Gitcoin public goods funding matching pool, and then I think a percentage of it went to the Plurality Institute, which is Glenn Weil's research institution, which will hopefully produce more mechanisms. So when you bought on the primary the NFT, then all of the money went to public goods.
$781,000 was raised for public good, which is really awesome. What do you make of, one last question, what do you make of the insane secondary action that it's got after that? It was like, it's got 10,000 ETH in volume since its launch, 23,000 individual sales. I mean, Machi alone bought up 30% of its supply.
I haven't followed any of these narratives at all. I don't do really much NFT trading, but I think that it surprises a lot of people at Gitcoin.
Good for you guys. I've heard. More eyes on Gitcoin and more attention on it all, if anything, right?
Yeah. Well, again, I've disaffiliated from leadership, and it's really cool to see the next generation of leaders kind of come into their own, directing their own projects that they conceive of and execute. My kids aren't old enough to go to college yet, but I got to imagine it's a lot like, getting your first college degree or getting your first job out of college. Like I'm a proud parent, but all credit goes to the Gitcoin DAO for that.
Congrats. How old I don't want to dox. I was going to ask how old your child is, but you say.
Yeah, I have small kids. And honestly, like part of what keeps me going in the space is like, I really do believe, when I look at them, I'm like, fuck, like climate change, AI, existential risk, biodiversity collapse. Like, I don't mean to be a downer on anyone, but like these are the things I think when I look at my kids. And I'm like, what if we could build new institutions to solve information age, public goods, like global public goods problems with crypto? Like, that's kind of like where some of my energy comes from, is like being a parent and like owning a house is like long-term staking on Earth and like humanity and stuff like that. And so it changes the way you think. Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, Mando's a new father. Yeah, Mando's.
Congrats, Mando.
Mando, what do you make of all this? What do you have for Kevin?
No, I guess. Look, I think you have incredibly admirable goals here. I want to talk about what are the main difficulties you still think to get there. So, what just the way you're speaking about this. One thing I've picked up on in just the use of DAOs and particularly for crucial elements is that, although I think there is a better form of democracy potentially here, there's also often a lot more democracy. There's a lot more votes on things to actually get to a resolution, and that can make things difficult. You run into things like tragedy of the commons occasionally. Like, how are you thinking about some of the classic issues that you think are present with DAOs, and how do you think we can like overcome them?
Yeah. I see in the chat someone. I want to answer your question, but it seems like there might be some breaking news in the chat. Farouk, I don't know if you want to go to that or.
No, it's fine. I mean, Silicon Valley Bank shut down by California regulators. It seems there's not much.
Yeah, I said it would happen by this evening. It's happened within an hour.
Crazy. Bro.
Too much money going into CeFi, into these institutions, regulated or not.
So Mando opened the show earlier saying all this bad is probably good for crypto. No. What did you say?
I said it.
You tweeted that.
Really cool narrative left. Like, this is really bad. Like, really, really bad. Yeah. But it's so bad that maybe the Fed has to do. Like it's what they're saying. To be clear, the FDIC protects you for, I think, 50 grand, maybe 70 grand. So if you have millions, like a startup might have in the Silicon Valley Bank, then you're not being protected. The deposit insurance is de minimis compared to what a lot of commercial or companies would have in there. So
it's 250 it says here, but anyways, it's pretty wild, right? Just adds to the convo here. It really just adds into the conversation we've been having.
Very high.
Over here.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I just like the first thing is like I don't want people to think that I'm saying that crypto is regenerating the world. Like, in a way, it's still more volatile and more crazy out there. And Silicon Valley Bank shutting down and FTX, like these are CeFi institutions. And I think the question is, how do we build a more stable, anti-fragile Web3 so that people, no matter where you are in the world, what regulatory jurisdiction you're in the world, can place their assets in decentralized institutions that, upon doing their own research, are anti-fragile. And so, like, I don't know, proof of reserves feels like one to me. There's actually kind of two categories of things that we could do. Is like, one is that we can rotate capital and talent and tension into things that are actually regenerative instead of degenerative. But an adjacent talk I want to write to my How Crypto Can Regenerate the World talk is like how to stop crypto from being bad for the world. So like proof of reserves, figuring out a way to like rotate capital away from Ponzi dump schemes into more regenerative projects. How can we build an immune system, like a decentralized ratings agency, so that you can see which tokens are actually going to be like good ones and which ones are just like rug pulls, educating first cyclers to help them avoid getting blown up, like all the things that you've learned since being in crypto in your first cycle. How do we like Matrix style, like, oh, I know Kung Fu, like for the first cyclers so that they can not get blown up. Solving the principal agent and other game theoretic problems associated with DAOs. Like, I really think that like we just have to make crypto better, is to answer your question, Mando. If we're going to ask more people to put their capital and their faith in it. And right now you really have to be highly educated about the space in order to avoid getting blown up. And that's the next stepwise increase, I think, for crypto to follow this vision. So those are all like object level things that we could do. The highest leverage thing I think we can do is rotate capital and talent and attention from like the degen uses of crypto, and like to like more regenerative uses of crypto, more like long-term stable uses of crypto. And by the way, I mean no moral judgment when I say like degen versus regen. A degenerative system is just something that goes down over time, and a regenerative system goes up over time. That's like the definition of degeneration and regeneration. Like degenning is fun. Like I go out with my friends at ETH Denver and we degen for a night, but you got to pay for it the next morning. And the whole point is like, let's build a financial system that's regenerative.
You definitely do. Damn it, I missed ETH Denver this year. It was like NFT Paris, ETH Denver back to back. Going to Charleston tonight for Beeple's showing tomorrow. It's a lot. There's a lot going on in the space. A lot going on in the space. I know we only have you for another minute. Damn, I think we're gonna need episode 2 because I really wanted to crack into like DAOs with you because you are quite the DAO expert. And we are a DAO ourselves, and I think it's a really important conversation within the Rug Radio ecosystem to explain. But there's so many like parallels between what you've done with Gitcoin. But I guess we keep
let's DAO it.
Let's DAO it.
I got to go out on a dad joke to fit the persona, but yes, let's do it. And as Rug Radio becomes more decentralized, happy to show you which landmines we stepped on that you shouldn't.
Wow, I will definitely take you up to that. This is like wow. This is like the highest of orders. And did you say DAO joke? Did I miss that one? Did I catch that one right?
Oh, I guess it was a dad joke, but it could be a DAO joke also, since I'm the DAO dad. There
you go. I forgot I do have a button for that. Kevin Owocki, I do want to be mindful of your time. You are the busiest man in crypto. So I guess we will stop it here for a second episode at some point. Hopefully, I'll get with you in the back end to see when we can do that and talk strictly DAOs, because today was obviously scripted crypto and everything. I have to say it's been an honor to host you, to interview you both on video. Thank you. I know it was last second I asked you about the YouTube last night, but thank you for coming to video and on audio as well. It's really a pleasure. If there's anything you could like leave the people off on this beautiful Friday, the weekend's coming. We didn't have the most amazing time right now in macro and whatnot. What would you want listeners to be left on who are perhaps newer into crypto than you are?
Yeah, crypto is a source of optimism for me. Cautious adversarial optimism, but optimism. I responded to the Twitter Spaces thread with 2 threads. The first is my ETH Denver talk, how crypto can regenerate the world, not how crypto is regenerating the world, how it can. And so if you click to the Twitter Spaces thread, you'll be able to see that. And then I also wrote a book called Green Pilled, How Crypto Can Regenerate the World. And I've also shared that for free for your listeners. We sell it for $13, 13.37, which is the meme number, but I'm giving it to your listeners for free. And really interested to see you all out there. So Farouk, OSF, Mando, I really appreciate your energy and for you having me on, and I'll see you on the internets.
Thank you so much. I've retweeted the Green Pill final that people can get. I've retweeted. I've shared it. It's going to live under the Spaces at all times. You can check it out. The code today for the reward system was Gitcoin, but I guess I gave it too late. But we'll figure it out after. I was too into this conversation to like I don't know. It's one of those interviews. But anyways.
The audience figured it out.
Yeah, the audience figured it out anyways. That's good. And you know what? The audience also really, really appreciate it. Just quickly, I do want to read you one comment, which is from Justin Callan, someone I personally look up to in the space as well. That helps us a lot. He says, I was early Bitcoin, but became frustrated with where it was heading as a community, not a tech. So I left. Owocki is one of the small group that had convinced me to come back to crypto. So I think that is pretty cool. Let's get some loves for Kevin Owocki in the chat. Make sure, please, if you don't follow Kevin, when you talk about signals and people to follow in the space in order to really understand it better, this is someone you want to follow. And your shit posts are S tier. So definitely. And with that, happy Friday, everyone. Big shout out to my co-host, as usual, OSF and Mando. Much love to everyone. Thank you, Kevin Owocki, for coming on. And with that, if you're in Charleston for Beeple's big showing, I'll see you around this weekend over there. And if not, I'll see you Monday morning, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 7:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time for another episode of Gem Web 3 on Rug Radio. Let's go.
And it's a beautiful day.
GM, peace.
Hey, bro. Thank you.
Day. GM. On this beautiful
That was a
day.
big episode.
Good morning
That was
to
sick.
Web3 with Mando.
I could run through a wall right now.
Live at 10:30, and it's all on Rug Radio. It's a beautiful day. Have a beautiful day. GM. Rug Radio.
Boom, and broadcast and spaces. One second.